Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Canadian Story. I'm very excited about this episode because we're having on probably the man who has been my friend for the longest of almost any of my friends, and certainly the man that I've been closest with in politics over the last decade, Kander. Cole and I grew up together in central Alberta, and he was a part of the same homeschooling group as me. And we were the only two in that kind of group to go into politics. So we've been both working and playing together for a long time. Once I was sucker punched in a bar, and Cole came to my defense and got stitches on his forehead that he still has a scar from. And we've been in a lot of situations together. He helped me run the membership sales drive and GOTV for the Unity campaign that brought the Wildrose and UCP together. I was his campaign manager for his nomination run in Red Deer North. He's helped me on every campaign I think I've been involved in Alberta since you've been on every campaign in Alberta since 2012.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this is a veteran of the wars of political campaigning. I consider him a fellow veteran and a brother. Cole, tell us what you love about Canada, or maybe you don't feel very much love for it right now.
Well, thanks for the introduction. That was quite the introduction. And yeah, definitely been involved in politics a long time, but I feel like the longer I'm involved, the less I know.
Isn't that the nature of knowledge? Once you actually start to understand something, you realize how little you know.
It's true. I think it's a little more true for politics. You know, once you learn more, you see how the back end works, and you realize that, you know, everything you see on social media is completely wrong. You know,
it's all a fugazi.
But I mean, if you want to learn from a meme of 6 words, I mean, that's your prerogative.
That's your prerogative too, right?
Not how it works. As for Canada, no, definitely love Canada. Think it's great, gorgeous country. You know, I've traveled to over 30 different countries in my time, and every time I come back, I'm just reminded of how lucky and awesome we are to be Canadian. I mean, I was thinking about that the other day, actually traveling. One of the things that I miss is just we have clean running water. I can turn on my water anytime, and we take that for granted here. But I mean, that's just one of the many things that we have in Canada that makes it great. You know?
Yeah, I was saying on a different podcast that one of the things I think is most fascinating is how much more immigrants seem to love this country right now than natural-born Canadians. And that's because, you know, they know how bad it could be. Some of them from the places they come from, the Syrian refugees or any number of refugees particularly, they've literally had to flee their homes because it's so bad. And then they come here and like a lot of people are like, oh, it's all right here. And they're like, this is a paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like I've been to some developing countries where, you know, you stop on the side of the road at a quote unquote restaurant. It's nothing like you think a restaurant would be. It's just like a little hut on the side of the road, basically made of concrete. This is in Vietnam when I biked there, and you know they like go out and kill the chicken yourself. They have no fridges, so you have no milk, no milk products at all, nothing frozen. Everything's, you know, fresh, but that's it. Like they don't have anything else, just other than, you know, 4 walls, some little tables, and sometimes no running water. And it's like that's like the average around there, and that's a business owner there.
Yeah, that's a successful person.
Yeah, and here, I mean, the people who are homeless in Edmonton and in around Canada, like, eat better and are better treated than the average poor are in developing countries sometimes. And so those people, that have fled of those countries and come here, it is like totally night and day for how much support there is from our government, you know, regardless of what you think of that. But and just how we take care of people and how we respect people, and you know, we don't trample them or take away their rights. I mean, you can, you're not going to jail for posting, you know, I hate Trudeau or I hate Kenny.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that is one thing for people who, born and raised in Canada, just anyone. I think people need to travel to realize how great our country is. We need to leave
Yeah,
it.
I think we need to promote more youth exchanges, that kind of stuff, where people are going to third world countries for educational purposes or just to see what's out there and realize why over 1 billion people in the world would way rather live where we live right now than where they live.
Yeah, or even encouraging kids to, like in Europe, they do what's called like a gap year after you're done university, and you take some time to travel around for a year, and that for most people in Canada that phrase means nothing, but I think it's super helpful to understand. Get outside your bubble, realize that your core group of friends, the ones you grew up with, maybe your church, your high school, or there's so much more out there. And I think that would help as well if we encourage that instead of even just going directly to university. I mean, so many people went to university without any idea of what they want, just racked up student debt
No,
for a degree in sociology.
thankfully, I did rack up a lot of student debt, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do. You might remember that when I headed off, I was like, I was going to go become prime minister.
But you didn't do it right after high school. You did take some time. You took a little time too to think about it, right?
Yeah, I did. I think about 14, 15, I was like, I want to be a lawyer. That changed as, I realized what being a lawyer was and what my maybe skill set was. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about on this, we haven't talked about with anyone up to this point, but Vitor was just on the podcast, and he mentioned, yeah,
awesome.
and he mentioned this. He said the thing that Canada has that nowhere else in the world has is you can show up and start volunteering and make it somewhere in politics here.
Yeah.
You're in a great example of that, not just in your professional life, but like in your volunteering life. And I wanted to talk more about the process you went through to become a highly engaged and aware political animal.
Well, actually the first time I volunteered, actually, it wasn't necessarily the first time, but the first time I was outside my city was actually campaigning and volunteering, and Vitor was helping me out.
Yes, exactly.
So, definitely hit that nail on the head. But I mean, I went to university for a degree in political studies, and out of my classmates, one got a job other than me. And, but it took him probably about 2 years to get it. Meanwhile, I had one before my final. And that was of volunteering. I mean, in my free time at university, I was volunteering on campaigns, started as a door knocker, volunteer coordinator, and then just slowly, not necessarily move my way up, but just, let people know that I'm trustworthy and able to do things. And I think that's what politics is really based off of is trust.
Yes.
I mean, hey, you can hire a good graphic designer, for example, but if they don't like what they have to design and they share it off with someone, that's worse than having a bad graphic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially if maybe they design it, they show it, then, who's ever looking at it realizes this could have bad connotations and they don't end up not putting it out, but that graphic designer's already shared it with someone who blasts it out to wherever.
Exactly. But yeah, volunteering, like if you want to be involved in politics, volunteering is the way. I mean, oftentimes if an elected official wins, they'll pick volunteers to be their constituency assistants or their riding assistants, the different types of jobs, because they want someone just that they can trust and rely on. And it's a great way to, and also meet a ton of different people. You meet lots of friends through that. And you get free pizza all the time, which is the main reason.
And sometimes beer too, if it's a certain kind of campaign.
Now in Canada, who knows? Maybe even cannabis. You never know.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about one of the most interesting experiences I think in your life and in our friendship too, was you taking a year off and running for the nomination of a major political party at a very young age. Everyone kind of doubted you. Obviously, the outcome we didn't get the outcome we wanted, but like I feel like that experience deeply shaped you and your understanding of what it takes in politics. What would you say some of the lessons you learned from it, and how did it make you love Red Deer more?
Those are a lot of tough questions. Let's see. I definitely learned a lot. Obviously, learned a lot about politics doing that. One of the first things I'd say is don't. Don't take that long off to run. It costs far too much money, and the return on investment, yeah, well, I did gain a lot of knowledge and stuff like that, isn't always worth it. So, if you are anyone out there who's considering running, set aside some amount of money that you're willing to dedicate to it, a certain amount of time, and don't go over that. It's definitely tough. It's also taught me a lot when interacting with other politicians, so I can better understand what they're going through. When someone starts tweeting at you and they're like, oh, this person's racist or xenophobic or this, and it's just one tweet. It probably didn't even get any other retweets.
Right, but you feel it personally.
But you feel it, and you're like, oh no, what if someone else retweets it? What if someone sees it?
What if this becomes the
reports on this one random anonymous person?
Just paranoia to the extreme.
Oh, I swear, the moment you run for politics, you lose IQ points and become the most paranoid person in the world.
Oh man, I remember many midnight phone calls of you being like, what are we going to do about this?
Oh man. I think that's one of the more important things I learned, especially because, working for other elected officials, it is very handy to know, like, when they're freaking out about something, you can't just pass it off because, yeah, I may know that it's not going to be a big deal, but I understand where they're coming from and what needs to happen, not only to, possibly mitigate whatever is going to happen, but also make sure that they're feeling okay. So I think that was one big thing I learned. Another was people lie. They may say they're coming out to vote for you, that they're probably not.
Yeah, you definitely learned that. Yeah, you learned that. But also, I think the most valuable lesson is that you learned how to lose gracefully.
Yeah, that took a lot of.
It was hard, but like you helped them in the next general campaign. You weren't like, you got into the trenches again, and you were a man of principle, despite, I would argue, they weren't towards you or me and a bunch of us, but you kept your principles, which is really all you can do.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, if you go into it like, you're either going to win or you lose. Those are your only two options. And, if you do lose, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no one that says you can't run again. There's no one that says you can't still be involved. But, if you're like some other candidates and just go off the rails or quit or cry or post some things on Facebook, I mean, that will be the end.
Yeah. And there's a funny phrase that a lot of the high-level political operatives that I hang out with use, which is nobody ever dies in politics. Can you speak to how true that really is?
I don't even know.
You worked for Derek Fildebrandt. You worked for Derek Fildebrandt, and he's far from dead now.
Yeah. No. Excuse me. I don't know how many times I've been tried to be canceled, whether by Twitter mobs or social media or just random things, but. That's the thing, like in politics, the general public has a very short memory. So that's something to take in consideration. Something bad may happen on social media, but as time goes on, people will forget it and won't matter as much. Or if it's something just behind the scenes, I mean, yeah, it could damage you for a little bit, but as long as you stick with it and keep going, yeah. I mean, I was kind of out of the game for about a year, and now I'm back, and Derek Fildebrandt, as well. He was.
I know he was like the disgraced guy, and now he's got the biggest media readership in the West.
Yeah. No, anything's possible, and
just never give up, right? Never give up. That's the one rule. That's what I tell my nephew Brandt. I have this kind of like call and response that I do with him, and I say, "What's the one rule, Brandt?" And he always responds, "Never give up."
Yeah. No, it's. Politics will never not exist. And the thing is, there are very few people who are actually in it. there's lots of people who post about it on social media.
But there's very few who actually do the work. Like you said, what it really is can you show up and are you trustworthy to get this task done and to do it well?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, even if something bad happens, the people who know that you're a good worker and know that things are happening will still, ask you to volunteer, or help out, or do different things in the background. And then once, time rolls over, that's, my favorite example of people forgetting things is the Sky Palace.
Yes, I know.
And there's sometimes I'd be working for a politician. He'd be so upset that this is happening. It's going to end his career. And we're remember this one time, standing at the legislature with this one politician, and he's upset about something. I'm like, people have a very short memory. Let me prove this to you. And so I stop a random person on the street. He's like, do you remember the Sky Palace? This was 2 years after it happened.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you remember the Sky Palace? And he's like, what is that? And I was like, well, that's that building right
there.
Here. The one that got Alison Redford removed from office, and she had to step down.
As sitting premier, and she had to resign over it.
Yeah. And so, if people forget, within 2 years, the thing that took down a premier of Alberta, no one's going to remember this little Twitter spout.
No, exactly. And I actually think that this is going to be the strength of your and I's generation in politics is older politicians. The psychological pain of that is pretty extreme. But like, how many times have they tried to cancel me now? I mean, freaking Warren Kinsella tried to cancel me. This Kareem guy posted that blog on the National Telegraph. And here I am getting great guests on like yourself on my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if our generation will be any different than the older generation. I mean, it still hurts when people say bad things about you. It still hurts to be canceled. It still hurts to get, let go. But I think anyone who's been in politics long enough understands that's just going to happen, and you either have to have a thick skin and live through it, or
get out of politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a not a coworker, but someone I worked with who kind of got, tried to stand up for something and got slapped down, and it damaged her, and she was upset and like quit and all this stuff. And I'm just like, that was nothing. It's just, that's like normal everyday part of politics. Like,
Well, yeah, that's something I say a lot, actually, as I tell people, not very many people survive in this game, but the people who do are like Teflon, right?
Yeah.
Like, Derek Fildebrandt, I think he makes a better media guy than he does a politician personally.
Yeah.
But he is not in any way doing poorly now.
No.
And he was literally the black sheep of Alberta from the eyes of the Kenney administration, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, if you go on, social, Twitter or Reddit and stuff like that, when his articles get posted, they'll be like, oh, this is run by Derek Fildebrandt and he's this, and people are like, I don't care. This is a great article.
Yeah. What are you going to do? He's producing quality content.
Yeah.
So what would you say the experience, because you've worked in, leader of the opposition's offices, you're now at City Hall, you interned in Ottawa, you've seen federal, municipal, provincial. What do you think is the thing you love most about working in politics?
It's actually the reason I got into politics, and I'm glad I was right about it. But one of the reasons I picked it is because it's always going to be different. Going into politics isn't just one thing. I mean, it's, whether you're in municipal, it's, roads and snow removal and, recreation.
Zoning laws.
Or if you're in provincial, it's, wow, I can't even remember what things are at the moment. Healthcare,
education.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
Infrastructure and different things. So it's not just one thing. If you get bored, say, in infrastructure, you ask to be moved or go concentrate on something else, and it's never stale. You're always learning. Like, at my job, I probably have to read about 100 to 200 pages of policy documents every week. And, I may not know anything about, I didn't know anything about snow removal when I started this, but now
But you know a lot about snow removal now.
When I worked in the opposition, I was in finance, which for some reason deals with alcohol.
Only in Alberta. Alberta's got a weird situation.
Yeah. So, I know a lot about the laws around alcohol consumption and all that fun stuff. And it's like, it's enjoyable to always be learning and not just be stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again. So that's why I like it. It's never boring.
Yeah.
And of course, you have campaigns too, which is a whole nother.
Well, the campaigns are like the ultimate board game. That's what I say. It's a board game. If you imagine it's chess, but the pieces can make their own decisions.
Or do nothing.
Yeah, or just sit there and then not do what they're told. Exactly. Of all the campaigns you've ever worked on, what was your favorite campaign moment?
Favorite campaign moment? Besides like winning?
Well, yeah, winning is why we all do it. That's the drug. That's the dopamine hit we're chasing. But what was your favorite win then?
My favorite, I think it actually might be tied. And it wasn't actually, you know what? I'm going to go with your original question, my favorite campaign moment. And it was actually like when I worked in the Wildrose war room and we actually made official opposition.
Yes.
My first time working in a war room, and we were, trying to take down the PCs and, hoping to get like a, win or at least get them to a minority. And then we had a huge opposition and up against the NDP. And it was just like, we were actually pretty stoked at that point because we're like, they'll be really easy to take out the next time. And they were.
Yes. Yes. They were very easy to take out. Yep.
But I think it was just like my first taste of being part of the core group that was, got to go to the election party with all the new MLAs and with with Brian Jean and all that fun stuff. And I think that really got me hooked.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily like a win when how you say it, but it was like it
was a win for the Wildrose. We were on the verge of not even existing like months before that election.
Exactly.
That was a win for us for sure. Oh man, that campaign is definitely one of my favorites. I've always said that the only reason I became a good campaigner was because over a series of 5 years, there was like 3 leadership races. There was uniting the parties. There was 3 political campaigns in the course of 6 years, like general election campaigns. Alberta just had this period of politics in a way that nowhere else in the country has had in a very long time or ever, maybe. I mean, the only exception is maybe Ontario with the Brown and then the Brown going and Doug Ford. And there was a lot of campaigning at that time, which I was a part of all that too. But that is how you get good, is you just have to do something over and over again. And the problem with most of this is you can only do it once every 4 years or maybe once every 10 if like a leader's in for a long time. But we had this opportunity to campaign over and over again for basically the period of 5 years.
Yeah, no, that was a crazy period in Alberta's history. It still is pretty crazy at the moment.
I've been told Derek Feldbrandt's writing a book about it, so I think it will be a good book.
Oh, well, that'll be interesting. There'll be a lot. Oh man, I'm looking forward to that book.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great book.
But yeah, no, your comment about once every 4 years is, I think, where most people who are involved, who are slightly involved in politics, get it wrong. Is there may be a provincial election every 4 years, but there's a federal election that happens. There's a municipal election that happens. Like, your campaign skills go across all levels, and
they're in very high demand. There's not a lot of people that are actually good at this.
Yeah, and so you help out on 3 campaigns. That's basically almost one a year. With all 3 levels of government. And so you can
give yourself a decade and you can become an expert in this pretty easily if you just every year you do a campaign.
Yeah. And you may not make money at it, but you make so many good connections. And the people who are usually involved in politics oftentimes have, you know, things that they want to promote or reasons that they're involved in, you know, business, or they want some different policy. And, you know, those are good business people to be connected to as well. And maybe you don't get a job in politics, but maybe you impress them and you make friends with them and you get a job that way. I mean, David, how many friends have you made in politics that have engaged in other sorts of business?
Well, this show wouldn't be possible without, I think, my political career, because I just have this endless supply of people from across the country who can come on this show and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And these are people from all walks of life, because when you're on a campaign, there's kind of three different kinds of people. There's the loyalists to the candidate, there's the loyalists to the party, and then there's the interested people, like just the people who are like, I wonder what this politics thing is all about. And those people are often the best connections because they're business people or lawyers or doctors or pastors, and they're not politicians, but they find politics interesting and politics impacts their day-to-day life.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's like, and that's one thing during COVID I'm missing is the events and stuff. I'm going a little bit nuts because I'm like, I want social interaction. Like, I miss people so bad. I want to go to restaurants and freaking on vacations and like do things with people. Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I was in a group of people outside of an airport of more than 20 people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's no. We won't talk about COVID. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, let's get angry.
Yeah, no, but it is like, it's great social life. You know, you meet, like you said, you meet tons of interesting people, and there's so many different benefits to being involved. And plus, you throw it on your resume.
Oh, yeah, and it looks good on your resume. People like volunteers.
Yep. Yeah, you're willing to do stuff outside of work. You're willing to help out, make your community, and I have friends who've campaigned for the Liberals, for the NDP, for different candidates that I don't agree with, and it doesn't matter. It's you're helping out a cause you believe in.
Yeah, and that's what it should be. And I think I'm exactly the same. Some of my closest friends are NDP or Liberal campaigners, because the truth is we do the same thing, just for different parties, right? And what I've always loved about those relationships is it just reminds me of how stupid the really partisan or the really petty partisan stuff can become. Like, a lot of my NDP and Liberal friends, they truly want to see Canada become a better place, and they're committed to it. Now, there's difference of opinion on how that should be done, but there are people, and admittedly, I've been one of those people at times, who will tweak a message to cause more outrage and get better results from a group of people. And I guess the reason I wanted to start this podcast is I want to get away from that. I want to stop talking about what divides us and start talking about what unites us. And as much as Trudeau says that it's all about diversity and stuff, he is the commander-in-chief of divide and conquer. He's got the Muslims convinced the Conservatives hate them. He's got the Hindus convinced that the Conservatives hate them. He's got the, millennial women convinced that the Conservatives hate them, and he's got the old women convinced that the Conservatives hate. He's convinced, and he's got Quebec convinced that Conservatives hate them somehow, right? Even though Quebec is probably the most conservative, quote unquote, place in the country,
right?
In terms of like certain values, cultural values, and it just becomes absurd how good they are at dividing us. And what I've realized, and you'll love this as a campaigner and someone who loves messaging and stuff, is we've been attacking Trudeau for all the horrible, stupid, idiotic things that he's done, and it has no impact. And I'm like, well, maybe we should start attacking him on the lies he's telling that are his quote unquote strengths. Maybe those are actually his weaknesses.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's the thing. If you're doing something that's not getting any results, I mean, you need to change.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So, it's, if we couldn't defeat Trudeau with blackface, like, what are we, what is the next election gonna hold for us? We need different tactics for sure. But on the point of, dividing, I think it's not necessarily the Liberals that are doing it. It's not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's not any. It is social media.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's inherent to social media.
Yeah, it's social media recommends. I'm sure what's that documentary on Netflix?
The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, for anyone who's watched that, it lays it out really well. Facebook, social media recommends things that are slightly that you like, and it slowly gets more and more extreme, and then you're only shown the things that really trigger people. Whether you're angry at something,
and you're shown those things because all that these social media platforms care about is how long you spend on them.
Yep.
It's how much can we sell this person's attention to an advertiser.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and politics definitely for worse has tapped into that. The memes that I create for elected officials that do better, often are the ones that, want to be careful with my phrasing here, the ones that, engage people better.
Yeah, and get people fired up. It gets the people going.
Yeah, and oftentimes it is because they're upset about something. And it's like, this is horrible. You guys should be outraged that this is happening. And people are like, yeah, I am outraged. And it's funny, when we worked with the Wildrose, we would post things like that. People are like, why do you always post things in negative? Like, why are you always opposition? It's like, well, here's a story of where we showed a new policy, where we said something good, and it's like, zero reactions, no media, nothing. Like we talk about the good things, but it never goes anywhere on social media, and you quote unquote never see it. So, and that's a sad thing about our world right now. And,
but I think it can be changed, and I think people like Joe Rogan and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, and there's a bunch of people who have seen this problem and they're fighting back. And I think that there's a movement that's joining both left and right to realize that all these people who are trying to divide us are the ones that are benefiting from us being divided. We're not benefiting from being divided. What is all this hate that we're carrying towards our fellow man achieving for us in terms of a better life? And actually, this is something I really wanted to talk to you about on this episode, because it's one of the things I admire most about you. But like, in a lot of ways, Cole Kander is the big brother I never had, because he kind of, in a lot of ways, led the way into this is what it looks like to be a young man. And you had this big shift in your life. There was like a turning point where you just transformed your life, and a lot of it had to do with exercise. But I wanted you to share, because I think there's a lot of particularly young men out there who don't think it's possible to change their stars, and they think they're stuck in whatever they're in, and they can't accomplish anything. But you, in my mind, are an example of someone who made the intentional decision to transform his life, and now you have a beautiful life.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to refer it back to one of the things we talked about earlier, and it was travel. Like, I backpacked Europe for 3 months. I lived off bologna and bread and stuff, but it was the best time. And when I came back, like, I was a different person. I remember talking with a friend, and I hadn't seen him since I left. And I was talking with him for maybe 20 minutes, and he stopped me. He's like, wow, you are a totally different person. And I think it is, we need to get out of our bubble again. I've mentioned that before, but I think that's super important. You may think that you can't change, or you're stuck in this, but it's because I think it does have a lot to do with your surroundings. Like, move to a different city. Start over.
And you know what? As soon as you move to another city, you'll realize you're better at surviving in a strange place than you thought you were.
Yeah, move to a different city and go volunteer on a campaign.
Yeah, you'll make friends immediately. Because campaigns are like, I don't know, they're steroids for friendship, because you're put in this pressure cooker of a situation, all pulling towards the same goal, doing your part to help for the larger perspective of a campaign. Man, almost so many of my best friendships have been made in the trenches.
Yeah, no, and they're great, and again, it's like you meet people outside of your bubble. Like you meet people that you would have never met otherwise. Whether you're traveling or you're campaigning or anything like that, and that gives you a different perspective on life. I remember I used to be very, very religious. And I remember when I backpacked, I was like, wow, these people aren't religious. I thought everyone was religious. It was kind of a shock, honestly, at some point to realize like, wow, like everyone is not like me and my friends at home.
Yeah, well, and we had the added benefit of being a homeschooled group of friends, so we were very insular in our entire
Very
world. It was a
tiny
very
bubble.
small place.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, that's,
but I want to go. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, so I want to go back for a moment. Yeah, you went and traveled, but then you came back and you transformed your physique, you transformed your confidence, you transformed your interactions with women. You weren't scared of them anymore. Like, talk about that process for 5 minutes here.
I, you know, the reason I went traveling is because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had tried, I'd gone to school for aviation, got my pilot's license, dropped out of that, you know, did sales. I just wasn't satisfied with life of doing, the 9 to 5, going home. I was making decent money. It wasn't happy. And so I needed to figure out what was different. So I did end up traveling, and it was a lot of find myself. It sounds cliche, but it was. It was like, what am I going to do for a career? Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, what am I going to pursue? And it was,
I'm not a boy anymore. I got to become a man, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was, forcing myself to go talk with people, knowing that I will literally never see these people again because they live on the other side of the planet. And
right. So you could be whoever you wanted to be.
Yeah. So I could, practice, whether it was meeting new friends at the hostel, or, asking a girl if she wanted to go to find a new cafe in the middle of this random city in Germany to, stuff like that. They said, no, I still went to the cafe, kind of thing. But it was like, learning that we always think that everything we do, everyone's going to remember. And it's usually because, you may be from a city of 1 million or a city of, 10,000. And you think that everyone in the city knows you, and
they're watching you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you grow up, it's like, oh, my dad knows everyone. Everyone that comes over to the house, he knows for some reason.
Yep.
And so you think that that's how it is, but it's not. And I think that's key to realizing you can do and you can change, is that there's so many people out there. You can be whoever you want. You can change, and it takes effort though. And you never see
that's the thing, right? Is it actually takes concerted habitual action to transform. Like you said earlier in the podcast, if something's not working, you need to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were the first example of that in my life, because you were the first that escaped what I would say was our bubble, right? You were the first one who left that bubble, and I looked out there and I was like, oh, like there's more possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't know I changed either. That's the thing too, and I don't think you will ever know you changed. But if you stay where you are and you never try new things, or you never, leave your comfort zone, you will never change. Working out is a great example. I still think I'm tiny and small, even though I compete in powerlifting. It's you never actually know you change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're out there listening to this and you're thinking of changing, it's like, go try it. You won't notice a difference, but other people will.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just put her on the couch. Okay. Sorry, folks, my puppy ran down the stairs. Yeah, I don't know. I want to say that I've always admired how you did that, and have tried myself to follow in some ways in that footsteps. And I think you and I are still both fairly young men who have a long way to go to be maybe the men we'll become. But I've always thought that the biggest difference between someone who ends up changing their stars and someone who ends up remaining where they always were is that the person who ended up changing their stars was okay with failure. They were all right with making mistakes.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid anymore.
Yeah, no, you gotta be all right with rejection.
Yes. Yes.
Even especially, that's one thing you'll definitely learn campaigning.
Yeah, like campaigning is especially if you're campaigning in a losing campaign, right? Where let's say you're campaigning for the Conservatives in Mont-Royal in Quebec.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have a lot of fun on the doors, but you will get used to people pushing back on you, and it will desensitize you to this cultural norm of politeness, right? You're not going to feel like if people aren't polite with you, you're somehow personally slighted.
You're on Tinder, rejection all the time.
Oh, as a man on Tinder, it's like a war zone.
5'11" means absolutely nothing on Tinder.
No, because you're not 6 feet.
But and politics knocking at the door is like, yeah, you get used to that rejection, and then you get used to like, oh, I got rejected at this. Maybe I'll go apply for this job. Who cares?
Yeah, who knows? If I don't get it, whatever. At least I tried.
Yeah, I realize that rejection isn't going to be the end all. Maybe I'll ask this person out. If they get rejected, oh well. But it's like, I'm not going to try this food. Different things. Who cares what it is? Like, you don't have to be afraid of trying different things because you think you're going to fail, and that's super important.
That's so important. And actually, my big breakthrough in my life was realizing that you don't even have to stay in one industry. Right? Like, I still love politics, but I like this podcast more than I like political campaigning.
There you go.
Because this is what I love most, right? Is talking to people I care about things they love. Like, could I have a better job? No, I couldn't. And that's what I always loved about politics too, is the individuals involved. Like, there's personalities in politics that everyone talks about, because what a political party is, more than an ideology, more than a tool for getting power, is a community. It's a community of people who know each other and talk about one another. Like, there are internal stories of internal party wars that never reach the outside world, and no one ever hears about them, that we all know the legends of our titans going back 20 years.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, there's definitely some stories that, should never go to the
Yes, that also should never be told. It's true. And I just can't help but think that if more people had community like that, they would be like, because I would never have amounted to very much if I had just stayed where I grew up, because I wasn't a farmer, so like I couldn't become good at that, and I wasn't good with my hands like my brother, so I couldn't go into the trades. So like, I had to leave in order to, I don't know, find I'd say success, unlike a lot of people who stayed and found success. But one of the things I learned from that was that old saying, "It isn't what you know, it's who you know," is more true than I could possibly articulate.
Yep. Oh,
like,
for sure.
Did you here? A good example is 90% of jobs never go to an applicant who sent in a resume.
Well, like my first few jobs that I got in politics, like I never, actually every job I've got in politics, it was never because I submitted a resume.
Yeah, exactly.
I was asked to send in a resume.
Yes.
It's that way for other things too. I mean, I've had sales jobs as well where, they reached out because they, heard from so-and-so or saw so-and-so. And it's like, it is important to be part of the community. And I think that's what a lot of people lack is community. People try and find it online. And you get into these alt, left, right, up, down, whatever different types of group that are extreme because, maybe you don't fit in one, but you find something that will just accept you no matter what, no matter how.
And then you feel like you belong.
Yeah. But I think it's also important to, whether you belong to a community, that you don't reject other communities.
Yes. Go on this. This is it right here. This is the good stuff.
It's not an us versus them. Like you can be like, I'm part of the community that likes to work out, but I don't dislike the people who don't work out. I'm part of the conservative group, but I don't hate the liberal group or the NDP group. I may not like some of their ideas, but we can't. There's far too many people who are like, oh, I would never date a insert other political party, and it's like, what does that have to do with anything? Like,
that's just the team. That's just the jersey that your team wears.
Yeah, and it's is a part of society that's always existed, whether it's sports teams, religion, politics, like, you know, different types of anime, like who knows? You know, it's just
Well, it's humans are meaning seeking beings, right? For some reason we're looking for meaning, and the best way we seem to have found to find it from a psychological health perspective is community. And so communities are formed around identity, right? And this is kind of what the whole point of the Canadian story is we need to form a community around an identity of what Canada is. And it's exactly what you just said. Just because you like something doesn't mean you have to dislike people who like other things.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it's sad that when you can't be friends with someone because they happen to like one thing that you were told your community has to follow.
Yeah. That's just people trying to control you.
Yeah. It's like there is no middle ground anymore. You can't have a nuanced discussion. Like, you can't take something, I like something from the left and the right, but I don't like something mostly from the left. This is like, I think who was it? Someone said that, you know, if you agree with 9 out of 12 things I am proposing, then vote for me. If you agree with 12 out of 12, you're crazy.
Yeah, I think that was Ralph Fine.
Mayor of New York, Coke.
Oh, maybe it was the mayor of New York. Yeah.
Yeah. But we need a Jamie to look up quotes for us.
Oh well, we're good. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed having you on. Obviously, your friendship has been one of the most meaningful and profound of my life, and I mean, you're the only man in my life that has ever had stitches because he was defending me. So you have that honorific title, and yeah,
I wear it proudly every day.
Well, buddy, I really enjoyed this, and I'll have you on again, I'm sure. But next time, maybe we'll talk about separatism in Alberta.
There we go. Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.